Good evening, everyone. I am Sarah BNWV, and you are joining us today for Mondays with the Mountain Mamas. Everyone, I am Sarah BNWV. We have a little bit of a lag. You are today for Mondays with the Mountain Mamas. Everyone, I am Sarah BNWV. We have a little bit of a lag. Monday. Let's get Tess in here. Thank you all for your patience while we work out these technical issues. Can you guys hear me okay? Kat, you can hear Danielle? Okay, yeah. Very good. All right, well, thank you all for joining us. Those of you that are here with us live tonight, and for those of you that are on the replay, thank you so much for joining. We are here tonight with the Mountain Mamas, and the Mountain Mamas are 25 women throughout the state of West Virginia who are running for office. They're either incumbents or new candidates, and while they all run their own campaigns, they're all proud to be Mountain Mamas, and they work together, they support each other, even though they don't always agree with each other. They all support each other and work very, very well together. So tonight is going to be an emotional night. We're just going to put it out there. We're going to talk about some tough issues that we as a state and we as a nation are facing today. And if I may, I would like to start out by offering a prayer. And so I will start that now. Let's bow our heads and pray. O great Spirit of all people, every tribe and nation through whom all people are related, call us to the kinship of all your people. Grant us vision to see through the lens of our baptismal covenant, the brokenness of the past. Help us to listen to you and to one another in order to heal the wounds of the present, and give us courage, patience, and wisdom to work together for healing and hope with all of your people now and in the future. Mend the hoop of our hearts and let us live in justice and peace through the one who comes to all people, that we might live in dignity. Amen. All right, well, I'm going to turn this over. We've got Delegate Danielle Walker. We have Kathy Ferguson here with us, and we are expecting Delegate Sammy Brown to be joining us shortly. So I am going to take out those who are going to be joining us a little bit later.
Go to my Facebook page.
I'm sorry? Did I miss something there? We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Delegate Walker, let's just get right into it. A lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, a lot of hurt happening throughout the nation. And many are asking, how can we be allies? How can we be supportive? How can we lend our voice? Someone like myself who doesn't know the same struggles that you do. How can we support you in this movement? So I'm going to turn this over to you to lead this dialogue with Kat and some others that will be joining throughout the evening. I would encourage everyone who is watching, please ask questions. These are folks that are either your current elected officials and are campaigning to continue to do so, and there's others who are campaigning to be part of the elected body here in the state of West Virginia. So now is your chance, your opportunity to ask hard questions if you want to ask hard questions, but ask questions and get to know everybody and be part of the dialogue. Be sure and chime in on the live stream, and we will get those questions answered as they come in, or we will turn them over to the candidates to respond directly. So Delegate Walker, I turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. I appreciate the Mountain Mamas for taking the initiative as we are waiting for others to do the same. These conversations are never easy. Sometimes they're not even welcome. Our children brings us things and we try to discredit or say that they don't understand. We are often taught to lead by example. Where do we begin? You have 3 women of color coming from their homes on your screen. Because we may have some similarities, our truths are all different. And I want to start with a very, very real one within our own society, within our own race. And some of you may not understand, so this is the reason why we're asking you to ask questions. This is your space. This is your place. But colorism is real. You see, we have allowed not just slavery to say if you're lighter complected, you are good. If your hair is straight, you are good. You should have straight hair if you want that job. Maybe you should lose a little bit of weight because your stature can mean that you are intimidating. Oh, please don't raise your voice, because it's funny that colorism is real, but then you would call the 3 of us all angry Black women. You would not call me the angry tan woman. You would not call me the angry brown woman. And you would never call anyone the angry white woman. That's the passionate one. That's the one that gets a pass. No more passes. That should end today. And if you've done it, stop it. No excuses.
Hey, Delegate Walker.
Yes.
Yeah, let me jump in just really quickly, because I think even in the context of what we've seen, the harrowing experiences of Black men that we've seen captured on camera, their deaths, and I think people don't understand. I mean, they clearly realize that there's an assault on Black people generally. I mean, it's been happening. We've been recording it more and more ever since Trayvon Martin, and there have been body cameras that capture these things. But there is some truth to that colorism, and it's our bodies are already seen, our colors are already seen as threatening. It's criminalized, it's demonized, and we're seen as threats. And it's like the more melanin that you have, the larger you present in your personality, the larger you present in your stature. Those are things that work against us. You know what I'm saying? We're seen as bigger threats. We're seen as bigger menaces. And so the assault upon our bodies is often, quite disproportionate. It's like, instead of having words, people feel like they have to pull out a weapon. They feel like they can't ask you to maybe not do something. They have to call the police on you because you're bird watching. Your very presence is something ominous to them. And the fact that that young woman had the audacity to even threaten his Blackness and was very clear in that Central Park case about saying, I'm going to call the going to be indicated. Not only did she have her own bias, but she even recognized the bias and the structural inequalities that are present in police systems, to know that that threat was really a threat upon his life. And so there are so many layers to this. And I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, because you're spot on.
Sammy Brown, I hear that.
Well, yeah, y'all. I mean, we're having a conversation. Sorry about that. About some of the biases that come along with skin tone. And I can't say that there isn't a bias one way or the other that is very like systemically based in our own culture, which is, it's very fascinating that, you know, we have to have a conversation amongst women and then men amongst themselves about what it looks like to show up in your community and how one tone is villainized more than the other. How I would push back though, because I am of mixed race and therefore I am a lighter shade of brown. I have encountered a lot of ugliness within my own community. And that's hard. That's hard because I cannot, nor do I want to, claim to be white or Caucasian.
Right. That's right.
Now, I have a wonderful mother and I think the world of her, but I don't look like her. I don't pass. And while that community is not going to call me theirs, my community won't call me theirs either. And so what we're finding, or at least I'm finding in my own kind of like shifts in roles and personal discovery and trying to figure out how to lead in controversial spaces like this, what I often find is that I'm still shouldering the burden, but I have no home. And so I'm going to push that, and I'm going to put that out there and have that really be a part of the conversation as well, because I don't want you to believe that one segment has it harder than the other. I want you to understand that the conditions are hard in different ways. I also think that it's our responsibility to stop it. And so I will absolutely repeat that. I will lift that up, because we don't have to continue these biases. We don't have to continue on with the systemic structures that continue to oppress people. And I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later, but I will close with this. It's not just about cultural norms, because when we get into policy, that's what criminal justice reform was intended to be about, to rip down the things that oppressed people. And it just so happens that it was disproportionately communities that were considered the other.
That's right.
What I'm going to say though is that the thing that always concerns me is that very often, especially, and not saying that's you all, but legislators in general, feel like any kind of segue that they want to have into the community, or things that they want to address in the community, are always relative to criminal justice. It's like there's an attachment of criminality, again, to Black culture. And so we have to be very sensitive to that, because really we're talking about educational reform. We're talking about housing reform. We're talking about this across the board, even financial reform. So there are a lot of, issues at play. The one thing I'm going to say though, really quickly, because we spoke a couple of weeks ago and we paid honor and tribute to that young man, Ahmaud Arbery. And to have to come here today and look at the civil unrest, the protests, everything that has happened after witnessing the death of George Floyd. I know for myself, and I don't know if this, I'm assuming that this happened with you all, that as soon as that was made available to the public of information that was coming through, and it was like a collective, not just a sigh, but a collective what the F from African Americans to the universe. How much more can we take? And I think that people don't realize that as a people here for 400 years, we are suffering and have suffered with, and I recommend this for any allies and people that want to be aligned and understand, that you pick up this book by Dr. Joy DeGuy around post-traumatic slave syndrome. That is something that is very real. It is very specific to Black people, not people of color. because we can pull in Asians, we can pull in Latina, Hispanics, we can pull in many people, Southeast Asians, Pakistanis, whomever, but they don't have the same type of experiences that we have had with regard to abuse of authority. And so post-traumatic slave syndrome, we suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder. We have vicarious trauma that we are, we lay witness to, secondary traumas. And every time there's an instance like what we see here, we are pulled back into that re-traumatization. And people just they don't understand and get that we are living and have lived in a continuous cycle of either fight, flight, or freeze. And these circumstances are just a manifestation of what we go through all the time, especially when it comes to police authority. And it's not a matter of not wanting to respect authority, but it's an assault. It's like as soon as somebody comes there, you don't know what their response is going to be with regard to you as an African American. And so it really lends itself to very often the worst circumstances. And it's just very unfortunate. And I just want to make sure that people understand that we're not operating, in some kind of, like in a vacuum or whatever. These are things that are affecting us on a cellular level. And if you think about our disparate health outcomes in terms of high blood pressure and in terms of diabetes, those are all things that would manifest themselves if you're living in that continued state of fight, flight, or freeze. And so these are the things that we really have to start to address, and we really have to look at across the board. And again, my prayers go out to the family of George Floyd, the family of Breonna Taylor, to the families of just everybody that has been affected by violence at the hands of authority who's supposed to protect and serve.
How to become an ally. I just had a question on my feed. What do you all view is the number one way white folks can help people of color, especially Black communities, without being white saviors? I think it's hard for those of us who really want to help without being too involved when we obviously don't have the same experience and deceived sometimes by our privileges. What are some ways we follow your lead effectively? Now this is a very genuine question, but I see some things that stick out to me. People of color with the influence of Black communities when Black men and Black women have just died. We have to make sure that we have some very hard conversations, and we understand what is included in the people of color umbrella. And we have to understand when we say Black Lives Matter, that is a specific, even though we want everyone protected. I don't want this to be, or I don't want it to be ignored that Black women and men are dying. And I think that's what Delegate Hornbuckle did best yesterday when he spoke in his last minute. I understand if you have a biracial child or you are a biracial person. I respect that. I respect it. Does it mean that the police respect it? Does it mean that your employer respects it? Does it mean your insurance company is going to respect it, or even your physician? But that's how you go with different trainings. Also, to be a white savior, that's a very, very hard term. I don't want you to be a savior. I want you to be an ally. I want you to share your privilege. I want you to share your privilege so not only the three women that you're looking at right now can have a platform, but that you invest in their communities, all communities. And it's very hard to juggle and balance that. And I don't want you to put that pressure on us where you're also smothering us. And once you have those trainings and you've learned how to articulate and exactly what to ask for, if you can watch that video over and over and you have no questions, the same questions that you're going to have for Minnesota Police Department, you should have for Bluefield, Morgantown, Charleston, Huntington, Beckley, Fairmont, Wheeling, because there is nothing. There was a bill January introduced for the 2020 session for police review boards. It didn't even hit the committee agenda. The lobbyists shut it down. I need you to pay attention to legislation. I need you to go to your city council meetings. I need you to attend even when there is a forum in the Black communities as an educated voter. Be uncomfortable and stay uncomfortable until you see the change. I'll let you ladies go ahead and chime in on this.
Can I ask a question? I'm going to be white people in general here, if I could.
No.
These are some of the comments I've seen. Well, you know, all lives matter. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, I think that's a foregone conclusion. We know that all lives matter. Lives matter. But we're talking about a specific issue where our bodies are deemed less valuable, that we hold less integrity because of our Blackness. And I will simply say this is the easiest way to put it. No one said when Susan G. Komen came out and decided to have a breast cancer race and movement around breast cancer that prostate cancer matters too. All cancers matter. No, they respected the fact that this woman had gone through the fight of her life and her family to press the issue and bring it home that breast cancer was something that was happening and affecting women. We're just asking for the same respect. It's a very simple thing. That's all I would have to say about it.
When the movement started way back when, Black Lives Matters is an extended version of Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. We must always look for history because sometimes it just keeps repeating itself. Kathy referred to the bird watching incident in New York City. For me, it brought me back. Oh, this is a 2020 Emmett Till. But Emmett Till's name is not in any history book. You don't even mention his name for Black History Month. You are upset because folks say, Black people say, Black Lives Matter. We said it way back then. We'd say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. So how do you discredit the color of my skin and the box I have to check under race? You have more love for my LGBTQIA plus sisters and brothers, or those who don't identify, than you do in saying Black Lives Matter. So you'll take the rainbow, but you won't take the Blackness. So you're telling me you'll take the sun and the day, and you won't take the night. Wow. Wow. How dare you not acknowledge that? Black lives matter. The question you should be asking yourself is, why do we even have to say that? And if you have not sat and had that conversation with self, I'm gonna need you to go back and meditate with yourself. Why did these folks have to say Black Lives Matter? Why, Trayvon? Why, Sandra? Why, Eric? Why, Aubrey? Why, Brianna? Why, Medgar? Why, Martin? Why, Malcolm? I mean, let us not forget. It's not far. We just went through this with Frida Gilmore in Charleston. So we are so reactive. We run to the fire. But where's the policy? We filled that room. People got up and spoke. Excessive force policies need to be public knowledge. I should not have to ask the police department, where is the excessive force policy? Like I click for everything else, I should be able to click to see that. This is how you protect everyone, but especially Black lives. Why are you hiding from the citizens that you are supposed to protect and serve your hidden weapon? Why do I have to ask for you to do this? Why do you have policies from 1986? And I do believe Rodney King was beaten in 92, 93. And you haven't reviewed that? Do your job.
You know, Delegate Walker, I was just thinking about, I'm probably older than most of you here. I remember Rodney King very vividly. I remember the riots that took place, and I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if this is going to be the images and the time that things will finally turn, that things will finally change. And it's shocking that here we are 30-some years later, give or take, and we're in the same place we were then. And we keep talking and we keep talking, and people like me, here's one of the things I'm fascinated by when I hear some folks who are white, or they say, well, I don't see color. What do you say to that?
I mean, I would just say there are levels to this. And at the end of the day, what we all should be working towards, all of us, is cultural proficiency. And that's, really where you recognize, understand, accept, and value diversity. And people, are somewhere on that continuum. Some people are at the very bottom where they're completely apathetic. But, even you talking about, the times of change between Rodney King and now. And to be honest with you, America does have they have a short-term memory problem, but it's a convenient short-term memory, loss. Because I would just say to you, Sarah, I don't know if you would know, who designed, who mapped out Washington, D.C., or, who was responsible for the traffic light. As African Americans here, and we get little to no credit. It's like we were here and we're entered into the textbooks as slaves, which we weren't slaves. We were people who were enslaved by other folks, brought here against our desires, made away the best that we could ultimately. But we get no credit, no acceptance, and no value to we contributed. It's like it happened and then it's erased. Now we move on to the civil rights movement. That, and then that's talks about, how we contributed to Katherine Johnson, how we contributed to NASA's development, how we contributed to the railroad system here, how we contributed to building roads. All the Black men from West Virginia that were part of the CCC team during Roosevelt's era that, you know, continued to build the country. So that's the thing, is that people really need to dig into their history, and they need to acknowledge and pay us our due. I won't even get into, you know, the reparations part of it, but just honor our presence here. And when you do that, you can it will help you to value us. But you know, it's one of those things where, you know, even the Constitution was like, we were 3/5 of a person, and you can't erase the fact that that was ensconced in writing, and now we're trying to reprogram people and get them to say, well, no, that wasn't necessarily true. And people, you know, white people will very often say, you know, they want to forget about the past, they want to forget about this, they want to forget about that. But yet, you know, when they have their Confederate flags, it's all like, oh yeah, well, it's history, it's history. No, we're going to accept the good and the bad. And people have to, you know, decide. I mean, you have to understand that it's all of that. We're going to look at all of the history, and let's look at it in a true fashion, you know. So that's my piece on that.
So my parents were right at the brink of integration, right? And so I think the trauma that they received in being young parents is what they taught me. That's exactly what they taught me. You don't see color, right? I knew my color and I knew my 3 strikes, but my mother never wanted me to go in with a chip on my shoulder saying they white and they black and they brown and they yellow, so I can't be friends with anyone. But maybe that was her way of saying, I'm so sick of the racial tension, right? And then my parents divorced, and it was a different dynamic where my father was higher on a financial level, and I grew up in HUD housing with my mother. And so Sammy hit the hell on the nail. I wasn't accepted by the folks in my HUD housing neighborhood. My mother didn't allow me to walk to the corner store, as I spoke, where I don't allow my sons to walk to the corner store, right? It wasn't because she thought I was more than anyone or that I was less than anyone. It was just a deem of protection, because the corner store always increased the prices 5 times than what the grocery store did. So she was giving me that financial freedom of, okay, we're going to drive there and you're going to go in there and you're going to see how much these bag of chips is and the size. Then I'm going to bring you to the grocery store and I want you to compare and see what that price is and the size. Don't get caught up. And then the neighborhood kids deem me as being a nerd and didn't want to deal with me. This was before we had the being off on Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. birthday. So I would be the only one standing at the bus stop going to school. And when I got there, the teachers always gave extra points. And I never forget my classmate. He said, why are you here today? I said, why don't you read I Have a Dream? Because I'm supposed to be. And I earned the right. Black men and women died for me to be here. So I suggest you turn around in your seat and ask yourself, why are you here today? It's hard. It's hard. Because she wasn't telling me that I didn't see my own struggles. My father wasn't telling me that I didn't have my disparities. At the age that I could comprehend, and it was very, very young, 4, you have 3 strikes against you. Number 1, you're Black. Number 2, you're female. Number 3, you're poor. But they also made an instance with me that I don't visit jails and I don't visit prisons. Don't let me be your first call. Now that dynamic has changed. So I have to add some to my sons. Number one, you're black. Number two, you a male. Number three, we poor. I'm sorry. Number four, please let your first call be me. I just need you to survive the encounter. I'm gonna need you to tuck it up. I'll deal with it when I see you. But how many mothers is saying that I won't be able to see you? So no, please, this is not a colorless society. Not at all.
Sarah, can I go back to the one question that came through about, how people can be allies? And I think that on Mountain Mama's page, there are some resources about that. But one of the things that think that is most important is that people can actually just start having honest conversations with themselves and really with their own families and their children, and really talk about these issues and vet them out. I mean, that's really the thing. I think people are so averse to discussing race. It's the bad word, and we don't want to talk about those things. They tend to push it to the side and put it under the carpet. But we really just have to start having honest dialogue. And I'm not going to say it's okay to be a racist, because it's not. But it's okay to examine your racism and try, you are that, or wherever you fall on that continuum, and you need to really work on that, because we really want to build better people ultimately. And thriving and trying to live in that space of racism is not a place that anybody should want to dwell. It's a negative space. It's not anything that contributes positively to the broader society at all.
So we'll go into policy. I totally agree with you, and I did a live stream last week, and I was very truthful. And my daughter married a wonderful young Black man when she was too young, and I was not happy. It was part of me was really proud because I brought her up to love everyone and be very inclusive. She embraced all religions and all people. And so part of me was really proud. Part of me was worried about what my family would say, because I had already seen what happened to my gay cousins. And I'm like, and it got really sad because we went to a family reunion, and the youngest was 5 at the time, I guess, and the N-word was just flying at some points. And I'm just like, what are we doing here? And so I was very honest when I said I was upset, not mainly because I was like, okay, what's my family going to think of me? And it is not easy to go on to live stream public and say, that is who I was.
Yeah.
That is what I thought.
Yeah.
And thank God I am a much better person today. Yeah. And I can acknowledge my shortcomings. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, Kathy, is we have to look within. I think both of you are saying we have to look within and say, what can I do differently? What are my prejudices? I mean, there are times I still think, do I need to lock my doors? Fortunately, today it's more about awareness of my surroundings. But there was a time that I thought that way, because I didn't go to school with Black kids. I didn't go to school with anybody of any color. I mean, we were all white. So it is a hard conversation to have with oneself who is white, and even within my family, who say, well, no, there is no racism. Everybody has opportunity today.
But that's the power. That's the power of racism, unfortunately. And that's the power of people being in power. Because let's be clear, you had an impression about people without ever even having seen them. Everything was given to you by either the media, by television, by whatever you had access to in your home, the conversations, and of course, in school. So those are problems. That's why we have to address it on multi levels. I mean, there is a reason why China can use stereotypical images of blackface, people in blackface with, you know, red lips selling toothpaste, and they have probably less than a tenth of a percent of Black people who reside there. And so these things are taught, and we really have to dismantle racism. And I mean, the roots of prejudice affect us all, because some of the points I think that Sammy indicated, even Delegate Walker, about, you know, feeling embraced within their own Black community. You know, there is such a thing as internalized racism, but I don't want us to get caught up in that conversation, because this is not a conversation and a time for conversation about what Black folks need to do for Black folks. We realize that there are issues in our communities, multi, you know, levels, and we're not a monolith, of course, but there are some things that we can see, but those are things that we'll have to work out. And a lot of it does have to do with the things that I mentioned earlier about, you know, the trauma and different things of that nature, that create self-loathing, create self-hate. But those roots of prejudice, you know, as they work in us, and we're taught to not like ourselves, white people and others are taught not to like us either. And because white people have held the power and have held dominance in our society and in just internationally, they have dictated how people perceive Black people. And so we really have to work on those type of issues, and we have to dismantle racism structurally across the board. And things like this protest are really bringing this to light. And the reality is that there are a lot of other people that are joining in this movement. Some have nefarious, you know, reasons, but there are a lot of disaffected folks, a lot of poor white folks that are suffering in the same manner that African Americans are, you know, and Latinos that are suffering as well, for these structural inequalities. And so one of the things I think that as candidates, that we've been committed to is making sure that, you know, we don't have a ruling class, and we're not an autocratic kind of nation where just the wealthy and the powerful get to dictate everything. And you know, that it's policies, and we need initiatives, and we need policies, things that are bottom up and that include all people.
Delegate Walker, do you want to talk about some of the legislation that was presented at the last session?
Sure. So the controversy was the Crown Act, something that we thought was going to be very simple, especially around the events that had happened with the young man and his basketball team, where it wasn't an issue. And then the research started flowing in. And we thought something as simple as hair would have been easier than some of the justice reform bills or some of the prison reform bills. And that shed a lot of light. Being in the legislation, I learned very quickly in 2 years, it's all about lobbying. It's all about presence. But if you don't see me, you will never hear me. If you live in this colorless world. If you don't understand the history of my roots, whether it's from my hair, no one wanted to take the time to understand something as simple as a lock of what it meant. And for some people, it is a journey. It is part of being a Rastafarian. It is not just a hairstyle, but you identify different hairstyles in the Black community as revolution. So when you think of the Afro, you think of the Afro pick with the fist on it. You think of this fist as being too much power for us. You think of this fist as a weapon. You think of this fist as something that you have to bring oppression on. That was a simple bill. For that bill not to even be placed in the committee that it was placed in, you knew that it was dead on arrival. I'm on that committee of Gov.org. The tone and the conversations around this bill, my white allies, you should have been there walking the halls with us. When we asked for presence on that Saturday, I needed you.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Delegate Walker, if we could, because I think for many people, the legislature can be very intimidating. You nailed it. It is all about lobbyists. Lobbyists hold a lot of power within our legislature because people don't go to committee hearings. People don't sit in the galleries. And one of the things I would challenge all of us who want to be an ally, who want to lend their voice, is when this bill comes up again, and you can follow, everybody can follow this online. They do change things around sometimes, but you can follow it. Show up at these committee hearings. If they have to move it, they'll move it to a room that's bigger. Let's make them move it to a room that's bigger. The other thing is, when you're in the gallery and Delegate Walker stands up, stand with her. When anyone brings forth legislation like this, I mean, people can come. The Capitol is their place. That is their place. They own it.
I can't get time and time. The Capitol is the true people's house, West Virginia. You did it for education. You slammed that place. Can we slam it for Black Lives Matter? Can we slam it so Black children don't have to be ridiculed or oppressed for their naturally grown hair? Can we ridicule it and ask for a police review board? We can amend that. We can have those conversations. That's simple.
Show up.
You drove there. We showed up and we showed out in solidarity and in unity. Can you show up and can you show out? To lay some groundwork to protect us, to uplift us. Policy is on our necks, West Virginia. Absence is on my neck, West Virginia. Not having enough like delegates is on my neck, West Virginia. Don't vote for your best friend, West Virginia. If Black lives really matter, as you so graciously shout with us in the streets on Saturday and Sunday, did you have that conversation with your co-workers on today? Or were you just being a lobbyist for a moment? Well, we need you for the movement. These are the real, true, hard conversations we must have. We must stay engaged. Please, we don't go back to session until January.
But until
Don't let the
then,
don't let the fall flowers fool you.
right.
Don't
And
get cold on me in wintertime.
right. And until then,
Yes.
there's city council meetings, there's county commissions, there's all of these different ways that people can get involved, lend their voice, and like you said, show up. We were the example for education when thousands upon thousands of teachers descended upon the Capitol. Let us descend upon the Capitol to speak out for Black Lives Matter. I feel terrible about even saying this, but we've run the course of our time on this particular issue, and again, it makes me feel bad to say that, but I think this is a continuing conversation that we will have. I know that all of the candidates here, the incumbents as well, welcome your questions, your comments. We could really lead the nation in showing what change can look like. West Virginia can lead the nation in showing what change looks like. So I'm going to bring DL here. Let's see, I'm going to bring Brittany in. Tough conversations, but conversations that need to happen. And Delegate Walker, Kathy Ferguson, Sammy, of course, Sammy had some problems with her internet connection, so she was not able to continue the conversation with us. But I know she welcomes any conversation from constituents. And so people get involved, get informed, get engaged. We keep saying that lobbyists have all the power. They do, as long as we let them have it. And that means that we just stay at home. They will continue to have power. And I used to be a poor lobbyist, so I wasn't a rich lobbyist. I was a poor lobbyist. But my point is that they do not have power if we show up. So on that note, thank you so much for your insights on how we can join this movement. I do want to bring in real quick one of our Mountain Mamas here, Cindy Lavender Bow, who's not able to join us on the live. The Democratic Women's Caucus in the House of Delegates stands in solidarity with their Black colleagues and West Virginia's Black, Indigenous, and people of color community in supporting justice for all. Thank you, Delegate Lavender Bow, for that comment and for the support. DL, where do we go from here? I'm going to unmute you here. You need to unmute yourself.
At the bottom.
Here we go. We're going to DL. Well, first of all, DL, how is Patty? One of our Mountain Mamas fell a bit ill today, and we want to know how she's doing.
Well, and we were going to start this with her, but that's a good break between that to say that Patty Hamilton, one of 3 Mountain Mamas in the 35th district, will not be with us tonight with her update on voting and absentee ballots and deadlines and things like that. But we all know the deadlines. It's the 3rd to get your absentee ballot request in. It's the 6th for early voting, and next Tuesday is Election Day. But Patty was out of a honking wave and either not enough water or too much heat. She is getting it back together at Thomas Emergency Room, and her car is now home, and she will be home, and I'm sure that she will post the statistics that she had researched to provide for you today. But it is just one of many examples that you all can tell, especially in this time of COVID, especially at this time of unrest in this country. Running for office is not easy. And it's both so hard and so heartfelt to look at our mamas of color, you know, taking the time. What the heck? Is somebody need me?
Yeah, you've got some feedback there, BL.
I don't have anything open. I was on a roll there too.
Yeah, that's okay. Move a little closer to your mic.
So it is just not easy to run for office, and it's not easy for any of you out there viewing, anybody anywhere coping with the challenges of this time. So last week, we were going to do All Are Welcome here, and when it was Memorial Day and it was such an important topic, we thought, well, you know, there's so many people that want to come on here and talk about the rights of everyone, the people who are at risk, the need for allies. Let's move that to June the 1st. It was an example of the slogan we got from Delegate Walker, be fierce and flexible. And then just as we were hanging up from Mountain Mamas Monday at 8 o'clock last week was when George Floyd had a knee on his neck that was going to cost him his life. And I'm sure that there are several lists somewhere that have maybe 1,000 people on that list in the past few years. And so while, you know, but we are going to talk about all people at risk needing allies. I mean, every one of us needs an ally. But when you are disenfranchised, or when you are marginalized, or when you are ostracized, or when you have something that the system, that is not for you, sometimes doesn't even make room for you, you really need allies. And I don't think anybody in this country needs allies more than Black people and Indigenous people. And one thing that I'm so grateful for is that after Standing Rock, I really educated myself about not taking things personally. I read Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, and I tell you, it is textbook. I have had so many conversations with white people that say exactly what is in that book. I even intervened with an Indigenous person who was taking the time of a conference coordinator because her feelings had been hurt. Well, our feelings are going to be hurt. Our feelings should be hurt. This hurts. And go to other white people who have done some of the reading, who have tried to deal with learning to be an anti-racist. No one wants to be a racist, but that doesn't mean you know anything about being an anti-racist, because it is something that we will do our whole lives long, and white supremacy so permeates this country that it will never be over. We will just get better. I mean, white supremacy isn't even a safe term for Black people to say. So white people have to call out the fact that it is we who are privileged by white supremacy, and it is we who must solve it, because people of color, especially Black people and Indigenous people, are exhausted, and how we feel is not the problem. And so, again, it is hard. I was going to get all prepared for this, but with my sister being taken to the hospital and the emotionality of the issue itself, I'm just going to move on to these other mamas who will, I'm sure, give you good words about how to be an ally. But Pat mentioned Dr. Joy Breyer. I'm not pronouncing that right, but she taught me a lot about why because people of color do not benefit from white supremacy, is why they really can't be racist. Racist is the system, not the person. Racist is something you do, not who you are. So I really recommend her. I'm going to put down some more recommendations. I already mentioned the White Fragile, which is a really good one. And I have loved listening to Layla Saad, who has a new book out called Me and White Supremacy. She has a podcast out. This woman is a Muslim and Black, now living in, I can't remember, it's not, somewhere in the Middle East. I mean, and she says it with compassion, but she says it with strength, because, I mean, she tells it, she brings it. And I have been so helped by listening to her. And you can add a score more of people, white, Black, and of other colors, who can help us solve this problem. But first, we have to see it, we have to say it, we have to stare it down. Another really good one was Dr. Ibrahim Kendi, who wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist. And he wrote a novel called Water Dancer. And as I did the audio book, and at one point it was where he was the child of his white slave owner, but he had the privileged white boy that he grew up with, knowing them to be brothers, half brothers. And he was allowed some learning because he was the son of the master. And there was one part of that book that was just talking about this guy, his brother, who just didn't know how to do anything but order people around. That is all he knew how to do. And then he starts talking about the genius of he did not call them slaves. I think, he did not call them workers, but this country was built on the skill and genius and work and sweat of Black people. And I just really encourage you to, become more conversant in the huge contributions that, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, learn that word, BIPOC. And I'll just move it to the others to give us their thoughts on what we can do to be an ally, but just know anything you do and everything you can do, just do it all the time. Not when there's a rally, not when you're on Facebook, every time you hear it, every time you see it. I mean, I was able to get back here, but I saw a yard full of people of color and one white cop on leash as I came here. And I had to decide, should I stop and see what's going on here, or should I get to Mountain Mamas Monday? And I decided to come here because it seemed pretty under control and not something that needed to be taped with our phone, But thank the Facebook and the tech age has a lot of problems. Dear God, our phones are helping people speak truths that we have heard forever, and we give excuses and we give defenses and we give rationale, but we see it, so we need to get to know it, and we need to stop it.
Dio, you're right on point. We need to own it. We need to own it and call it out when we see it, whether it's on social media, whether it's in person. Stand up, be heard. I'm going to let DL go back to the green room. I'm going to bring in some other Mountain Mamas at this point. DL, your passion, your.
Well, I love you all. I love you so much. I even messaged you all about Patty before I called her husband.
Well, we're glad to hear she's okay, and we want to definitely stay informed. So I'm going to let you out, and then I'm going to bring some other folks in here real quick. I'm going to bring, I don't think we've had Stormy in here before. Brittany.
Hi, guys.
Would you like to share your thoughts?
I'm good. How are you? Yeah, sure. So this is hard. This is hard for me to talk about. I mean, we should be uplifting other people's voices, but I guess maybe give my perspective on what this has been like for me. As like you said, I grew up in a community that didn't have a lot of diversity. I lived a privileged life, and it wasn't until college that I really started to diversify in terms of my friends, I guess. And that meant anything. I mean, I'm talking about like LGBTQ community. Today is the first day of Pride. Happy Pride, everyone.
Happy Pride Month.
Yeah. And so thing that I've been thinking about today too is that Pride was started by riots. I mean, all the rights that LGBTQ plus people have today was because they had tried peacefully over and over again to get something accomplished, and it didn't work. So many people have been appropriating MLK's quotes on peace, and I'm a borderline pacifist. I'm a very peaceful person. I'm a vegetarian. Anyone who knows me knows that about the first thing I say in my classroom is, if you see a bug, you're not allowed to kill it, because don't kill bugs. That's horrible. Everything deserves to live. And at the same time, you can't condemn what's happening right now, because if my family, if my friends, if my neighbors were being killed on the street without any recourse, I can't say what I would do. And to say things have not been accomplished by violence, well, everyone who is white essentially hated Martin Luther King Jr. in his day. So if he were around today, we would still be criticizing him for peaceful protests. Yesterday, I stood out with some people, and I posted about it because I was at 29, the oldest person there by the end. There were 7 other people younger than me standing out there, and it was just so beautiful that some of my current students or former students were out there. And in my post, I realized after the fact what I'd said. I said, we only had 2 people flash white power signs at us. How is it appropriate that we had any white power signs flashed at us and that seemed acceptable in society? That my Black student had to see that twice just because she was standing out for her, her right to exist in this society. So it's been awful. I mean, I didn't sleep last night. I stayed up very late watching videos that were posted on Reddit by people who were in these protests. And so they would upload the videos as they happened, and then they were consistently being taken down. So I saved a bunch of them and posted a few of them this morning for people to see, of just instances where we're seeing like racist policies in our law enforcement, like allowed to continue. They're on film picking fights with protesters for no reason. And I mean, I watched one video, which was a compilation. It was one of the ones I posted, and I watched it with my husband, and 20 minutes later, my heart was still racing. And I mean, I've watched some very upsetting things, but for some reason, this is American soil, and this is happening right here. And it's like something we've never seen before. But I don't know how to tell people what to do, and it's just not my place. So I would say, as someone who's trying to learn how to be an ally, a better ally, someone who's trying to learn how to uplift voices rather than speak for people, it's been hard, but emotions are nothing and feelings are nothing when it's compared to people's lives. Me feeling uncomfortable and upset and not being able to sleep is nothing compared to losing a loved one just because of the color of their skin. So I feel a lot of guilt associated with being white and being privileged, but feeling guilt rather than fear is itself a privilege. So I think it's good that I feel these things, that I feel uncomfortable, that I feel upset. And I hope that I'm someone who continues to, stand as an ally and help people when cameras aren't rolling and things like that, because that's the most upsetting thing. Something that I've noticed is that unless something happened today that I didn't see, Stephen Smith is the only candidate for governor in the state who's made a public statement on this. And I could be wrong. I might have missed something today, but he's the only one who's done that. And, you know, Danielle, I know he's going to be in Morgantown tomorrow, and he's going to be in Buchanan on Friday to stand at a candlelight vigil. And he's not taking pictures or posting it. Other people are seeing him at these places and posting about it, because that's what it's about. It's about being present and using your privilege to uplift their voices, not, you know, some social media post. So that was very rambling. Like I said, I'm not sleeping much, but that's just my perspective as a young person, as someone who grew up with privilege without a lot of diversity in my friend group, who's learning slowly but surely how to be an ally and someone who's trying to stand up and fight. So I'm also proud to be here with all these women who I know are in the same boat as me. And hi, Storm, I haven't seen you in forever. It's so good to see you. But yeah, I will turn it over to someone else.
Well, let's bring in Storm. We haven't, she's running for office. I want you to introduce yourself first, because you haven't, I think this is your first Mountain Mamas that you've been able to actually participate. So welcome, and tell everybody who you are, where you're running, and jump in on the conversation.
Thank you. So I'm Storm Frame, and I am running for the House of Delegates in the 66th District against Paul Espinosa. For those of you that don't know, the 66th District is kind of like a horseshoe around Jefferson County. We have 3 delegates from Jefferson County, currently Delegate Doyle and Delegate Sammy Brown, and then I'm running for the 3rd seat to flip that seat in Jefferson County. So a little bit about me quickly. I'm an educator in Jefferson County, public educator, and I have 4 children, so they keep me pretty busy. This online schooling was no fun, and of course, because I'm a teacher, I made them all do all of the schooling all the time. So, but anyway, I'm also, most importantly, married to a Black woman. And this past week in our home has been really trying. And so I wanted to kind of speak to one of the earlier questions. Somebody said, I believe it was Delegate Walker who said, share your privilege. And somebody asked, by being more involved politically, or is there something else we can do daily? And I will speak to that. I am a white woman. I grew up with privilege and I had no idea. So 10 years ago, if you would have asked me if I had white privilege, I would have told you no, that I worked just as hard as Black people, that I didn't see any difference at all. And then the past 7 years have really opened my eyes. We have white privilege, and our job now to be allies is to recognize it. Our job now is to let it sink in and to empathize. And what can you do daily? Every day you can look yourself in the mirror and you can acknowledge that you have privilege because of the color of your skin. You are not going through the same experiences. You don't have to understand what they're going through. That's not something that needs to happen. You can be uncomfortable. You can sit in that anxiety, sit in that emotion, sit in that fear, because you know nothing about what it is like to be Black, and you never will. I am married to a Black woman, and I do not know her fears and anxiety. I will never know, because I still don't have those same experiences. I will never have those lived experiences. And as white people, it is our job to be allies, to just let that sink in. Accept it. It's okay. I think, I tend to want to fix things. I tend to want to, come up with solutions. I'm a solution-driven person. But in times like these, it's not our job to tell people what is right and what is wrong and what to do. It's our job to listen. We've been trying to do that for far too long. We need to listen to what they need, listen to what they want, and be available. So I would just say, you have a responsibility now to be open-minded and to sit back and acknowledge your white privilege, and show up. Not just, we went to a protest in Baltimore this past weekend, and I was very proud to see the amount of people out. I mean, just thousands and thousands and thousands of peaceful protesters, and it was wonderful. But there was one woman that was standing there, and she had a sign that said, "Don't forget my son when you leave this rally," something along those lines. And that just, it hits home. We can go to rallies. You should be going to rallies. You should be showing up at protests. You should be doing all those things. But then you also need to be doing things behind the scenes. You also need to be talking to your family and having hard conversations. You need to delve into what the issues truly are. And that doesn't just happen at protest. That the majority of that work has to happen behind the scenes. It has to happen in your homes. It has to happen at your family functions. It has to happen at sporting events. It has to, or we're not going to see any change. So I'm Storm Frame, for those of you that don't know me, and happy Pride Month. And I am here. If you have any questions, if you want resources, I will try my best to provide those in any way that I can.
Well, thank you, Storm, so much for contributing. We have a lot of voices that we want to continue to bring in. Tess, I know you're muted right now. Go ahead and unmute yourself and let's lend your voice to this conversation. Welcome.
Hi, Tess Jackson. I'm running for the West Virginia House of Delegates in District 15. It's right smack dab in the middle of Putnam County. And I'm a teacher, and I ran once before, so this is my second rodeo. And I'm very happy to be here. I also feel awful to be here, I guess. It's been a rough week, especially for people who are trying their best to help people around us feel better and find some calm in this time where there just isn't a lot of it to go around. And it's been a rough week just to be on social media or to be on the news. I'm one of the people, I'll confess to it. I can't watch the videos. I just can't. I watch as much as I can, but then I have to stop just because it's the kind of person I am. And every time one of those videos shows up on my feed, I have to take a minute and just be really sad that this is the world that we live in at this moment, and that these are people whose lives have been snuffed out today, not yesterday, not the day before, but these are things that are happening today. And that's been really hard for me, I think. I teach in a community of color, and I see my kids in every single one of those videos, and it's really hard. So I'm gonna try and be positive because I think we need more of that, and talking about how to be an ally beyond being at a rally or showing up for your friends or doing those sorts of things. I think the first one is that, especially if you're white, you need to be the person who tells someone that something that they've said is insensitive or just outright racist. people are too tired of being the person who has to tell somebody else that something that they've said is not the right thing to say. And I think in the communities we live in West Virginia, that there's an apathy that comes along with those racist people. If you want to look at it that way, that's just my racist uncle, or that's just my racist neighbor. We can't sit back. You can't be the person who sits back and accepts that someone else is racist. At a minimum, you need to be ready to tell them that they're being racist. And that conversation may not go anywhere, and that's totally okay. But you need to be the person that says, you can't say things like that. Who says, when you say that, it's racist and you shouldn't be that way. And maybe that's the end of the conversation, and that's okay if it is, but maybe it's not. And maybe you're the only person who exists in that person's sphere who will say you can do that. And that's kind of one way to use your privilege in those spaces to make them less racist. And maybe that only happens for you a handful of times over your lifetime. If it does, that's great. But always be ready to be that person, to be uncomfortable on behalf of those people who have been uncomfortable forever. So that's the first one. The other one, and I think Ferguson touched on it earlier, familiarize yourself with the contributions of African Americans. I came into my teaching job and I had these kids, and there was a lot more color in the kids that I have now than the kids I went to school with. And I was sitting down and I was trying to figure out what we were going to do for Black History Month. And I had someone recommend a slave novel, and I threw it around a little bit. And then I asked my kids, I said, what do you guys want to learn about for Black History Month? And the number of children who said, Miss Jackson, please not another slave book. Please not another slave book, or a book about kids who are treated poorly because they're Black, or just don't do that. And so I said, okay, we will not, we'll trash this and we'll find something. And the book I teach now is an encyclopedia of African-American inventors. And the number of children I have who couldn't name a single Black scientist before reading this book in my class was huge. And afterwards, they can name 15. They can tell you that we wouldn't have 3D movies without a Black woman named Valerie. They can tell you that we wouldn't have cortisone shots for inflammation if it wasn't for a Black doctor. They can tell you that potato chips were invented by a Black man. And those are things they're proud of. So take a minute and find something that is not a race narrative that you can educate yourself about in the African American community. Because being able to go back to those things and say we wouldn't have cell phone microphones without Black Americans, we wouldn't have, the hair products that we have now, or the makeup products that we have now without Black Americans, is a much more powerful, positive narrative to put into the universe, to have as just knowledge that you personally have and that you share with others. So that's sort of my, also happy Pride Month, everybody. It's that time, and especially for our LGBTQ plus people of color, we hear you and we're doing our best to give you a voice, we swear. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Tess. Robin, I went ahead and brought you in. Again, we're all kind of talking about, the difficult situation we find ourselves in. So I'll let you have the floor here.
Thanks. And when I introduce myself, when I'm speaking to people, I usually say that, I am Robin Cutlip, and I'm an advocate and an ally for all. And, this week it's made it even more difficult to be able to think that way. Sorry, try not to get emotional. but I am a high school teacher, and I can count on my hand the amount of African American students that we have in our school. When I grew up and went to all through high school, all through public school, there was not one Black person in my school. So once I got to college and, experienced more people and more diversity, it just intrigued me. I wanted to know everything that I could possibly know. I mean, the Civil Rights Movement is my absolute favorite thing in history to teach and to learn and to read about. But there's just so much more. And having the white privilege, I never in my life thought that I had white privilege. My mom and dad were divorced when I was 3. We were as poor could be. I had my first son when I was 15 and my second son at 19. So never did I think that I had white privilege. It just wasn't something that I was exposed to, because I wasn't exposed to anyone of diversity at all. I mean, at all. There was, no Blacks around me, not even hardly any people of the LGBTQ community. And now my best friends, who, I call my family, are members of the LGBTQ community. So I see that I did grow up with white privilege because I didn't have to worry about staying out past curfew. If I got caught out past curfew, I was told, go home. There was a couple of times when a large group of my friends, we were in a parking lot where we should not have been, at 10 o'clock at night, and a police car pulls up, and some of us scattered, but some of us are not as quick. We didn't worry about getting shot. We didn't worry about being thrown to the ground. We were told, go home. So I can't imagine what a mother of a Black son or daughter feels every time their kid leaves the house. Because I know how much I care about my sons. And I know that if anything would happen to them, that this mama bear would come unglued and I would be burning down every damn thing I could get a hold of. Because my sons are my world. So to know that mothers have to explain to their sons that they can't do certain things because of the color of their skin makes me furious. And when I show tears, it's usually because I'm very angry. So this situation makes me very angry because we don't understand what some of these people are going through. And I try to teach my students that we're all one, but we also need to understand that we are all one. We are humans, but we need to see the diversity in everybody. We need to see the beautiful colors in everyone, whether that is Black, brown, red, yellow, or rainbow. We need to experience everyone's color. We need to experience everyone's history. We need to learn from one another. I know America was supposed to be a melting pot, but we did a thing in class one time with my students when we talked about that. We talked about what it meant to be a melting pot. And the concept sounds great, that everybody become one and we live in this wonderful community together and we all look at each other as equals. So we took a bunch of crayons and we looked at all of the beautiful colors of the crayons and then we melted them together and we ended up with a blob mess. So the point of the whole lesson was to try to teach my students that everybody is unique and that we need to keep that in mind when we talk to people. We need to keep that in mind when we meet people. Sometimes being white and having, the white privilege that we don't even realize that we have, you feel uncomfortable when you meet a strong Black person. It's like I used to feel like I was trying to over push myself because I wanted so bad to be able to talk to that person and to learn from them and to be friends with them. So I kind of felt, wow, they're going to think that you're mental. So for white people, sometimes it is hard to figure out how to be an ally, how to show that you're a friend. Make eye contact, smile, and then you feel like, well, you're hoping that Black person doesn't think that you're, just staring them down. But so it is difficult for people to understand how to become an advocate and an ally and a friend to everyone. And living in a community where I can count the Black people on my hand makes it even more difficult. So as teachers and leaders in the community, we have to start letting people know that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to want to know more. And it's okay to say, I'm a friend to everyone. And we just have to remind ourselves of that every day. If we don't know what to say, then don't say anything at all. Just listen, just smile, and just let people of diversity know that you're not their enemy, you're their friend, you're there to support them. And I think that's what an ally is. Just someone, if they need to come to you for anything, they can. But an advocate is someone that's going to stand up and fight for them. And I guarantee any of you that if you needed me, I'd be there to fight with you. Not just with words, but if I had to burn down a police station, I'd be there with the matches, because we have to stand up. And until we all stand up together, just like during the teacher strike, like Delegate Walker mentioned, we all came together as one and our voices were heard. So until all of America comes together as one and shows that we are not going to take this crap anymore, and that we're going to fight for our brothers and sisters of color and fight for our brothers and sisters of the LGBTQ community, then these people are going to continue to be pushed around. So to me, that's what an advocate and an ally is. Somebody that's ready and willing to fight, but also someone that's ready and willing to listen when they don't really know what to say. So it's been a horrible week. Like Brittany said, you don't know what to do. Sometimes you just don't even know what you should post on Facebook, on social media, because you just want to be there, but sometimes you just don't know what to say. So, just changing your profile picture, changing your background, just let people know that you care. And
that you stand with them. Absolutely.
We stand with them. So, I don't want to be pushy, and I don't want other people to think that I'm, all of a sudden you're standing with people because you're running for office or something. So I really think that's why we have to continue to let our voices be heard. And I know there's at least 3 of us on here that are teachers, and I know that all of us promote that in our classrooms every single day. And
absolutely.
The biggest poster hanging on my door is it's a big triangle that says safe space. So my kids know, no matter what color they are, no matter who they love, my room is a safe place. And I hope that people would know that my home is too. So if I ever seem pushy or awkward around you, Delegate Danielle Walker, it's because I have the utmost respect for you. You are one of the most beautiful, most outspoken, one of the most smartest women I've ever met in my whole life. I once told her that I didn't see color in anyone because I see everybody as the same, and I thought she was going to slap me.
You're lucky she didn't, maybe.
I did not mean it negatively. I just want to see everyone treated the same.
Well, I think, Robin, you're bringing up some good points, and I've said this before. I'm not always going to get it right. I'm not always going to say the right thing, and that's where my privilege has to sit down and say, all right, it's my turn to listen, and what is it that I need to say? And speaking of that, I want to turn it over now to Jeanette. Thank you for waiting so patiently, but we do want to have everyone heard here and get their input. I do want to say welcome Natalie Tennant to watching Mondays with the Mountain Mamas. It's good to see you here and watching. And Jeanette, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. And, it's a privilege to hear everyone here. And I'm getting feedback, and I don't know why, but privileged to hear from everyone. And I wanted to thank especially Danielle and Sammy and Kat, for bringing such an important perspective to this. And it has been an awful time. And my heart goes out to our country. It goes out to our Black men and boys. Sean Hornbuckle talked about his beautiful, brilliant son. Danielle, you talked last night at a town hall about your kings, and I think that's so important. There's just a wonderful, rambunctious, beautiful boy in my Sunday school who I am concerned for his future. You know, and something happened on the news this weekend. I was watching early morning on CNN, and something that I think all white West Virginians need to hear this. All white people need to be reminded of this. And he was sharing tweets about Black men, Black boys, and the question the tweets were answering was, when was the first time that you were pulled over, you were stopped, you were harassed, you were violated in some way? And to me, you know, the importance of that is the question was not, has this ever happened to you? But how old were you when this first happened? I'm a delegate. I'm running in District 17. My priority is working with kids. I work in child abuse prevention, child mental health. I'm a communicator. I'm a local historian. And to me, you know, education is key. And I want to talk, you know, to remind people like me, you know, that we don't have the capability to understand, much less to judge what's going on in our country right now. In terms of being able to empathize on any kind of deep level, I can only say this much. Because of the face I was born with, because of a defect I was born with, I knew from a young age what ignorance and cruelty looked and sounded like. Because of just simple playground name calling, remarks on the school bus as I was growing up. These were very small indignities, but they had an impact on me. And that became part of my skill set growing up, I think, was to recognize ignorance and cruelty and the difference between those two things. Because I recognized ignorance and cruelty at a young age, I think I fashioned my life to avoid the impact of that. And I was able to do that largely, you know, effort, of course, but largely because of random blessings, because of dumb luck, and because of the fact that I was middle class and white. So, so I can say that much, you know, and I think that had an impact on me. And I can say that it is my responsibility, not just as a candidate, but as an adult. And I believe that everyone's duty in this life who calls themselves Christian, who calls themselves a patriotic American, who calls themselves a proud West Virginian, that it is our duty to correct ignorance and dismantle cruelty in whatever form we see that, from the smallest, seemingly insignificant microaggression, like I said, the person in the checkout line that's being treated rudely, you know, from those small things to the mass of laws and policies that are demeaning and dehumanizing our neighbors. That's our responsibility as humans to do that. To borrow a phrase from Langston Hughes, whose poem about the dream deferred has just been kind of ringing through my brain. Our neighbors, our Black neighbors, have been sagging under the weight, you know, for too long in our state and in our country. And we, you know, my heart, whenever this happens, you know, too many times it happens, my heart and everyone's heart says, how long? How long are we going to have to wait? You know, we're going to wait for people to ask politely for justice and equity. Is that, you know, how long is how long? You know, how are we going to wait? How long on this Pride Month, as we observe this, are we going to wait for the passage of a Fairness Act? So our brothers and sisters from the LGBTQIA community can live without being evicted, fired, or having their civil rights violated with impunity. How long? How long are we going to have to wait till women in West Virginia for their lives' work are not going to be dignified with a wage that they can live on? And how long are we going to wait for the blaming and the shaming to be replaced by full access to care and support for our West Virginians with mental and physical and behavioral and developmental disabilities? We're oppressing so many people that we don't have to do that to. And I want to stop saying how long. I want to act. And how long are our children going to be able to, we want them to just simply have a childhood. And we see generations and generations that have passed by that too many of them can't just have a childhood and make mistakes. I just am running because we have to stop asking. We have to stop asking how long, and we have to start acting for the long haul. We listen. Today we listen. We march, but we march back in the line. We don't have to march at the front of the line. We follow. We listen. We learn. And we don't just learn today, but tomorrow and this year and next year. This thing isn't just something that's going to blow over again. We're going to have an impact. We've got to be there for the long haul. We have to practice humility. We have to know that it's not always our idea. And I am so, so thankful that Danielle and Sean and Sammy are at the table, that are in that chamber being represented, and they need us there to lobby and to march into that Capitol as well as on the street. And they need to tell us, how to help them live the way. We demonstrate respect. It's not enough to say, I respect you. How do we demonstrate that? It's not political correctness to demonstrate. It's demonstrating respect to people. You can do that verbally. You can do that non-verbally. But it's our job to do that. We stand in the gap. We teach other people to stand in the gap for our Black brothers and sisters, for all of the people in West Virginia that have been oppressed for all this time. And so just to close on that, we have to systematically correct ignorance, and we have to systematically dismantle the cruelty that has torn our nation and our people apart. And, I very much appreciate the fact that we're together and that we can address this. And this conversation is something that has to continue. This is we always say this is just the beginning, but this is something that we as white allies have to make sure that we facilitate these conversations and open those doors as much as we can, and then let our neighbors, our Black neighbors, our brown neighbors, our LGBTQIA neighbors to lead those conversations and let us learn and let us help lead. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And it is, I always, like I said, I feel bad when I say time, the time is closing. I will say that I am watching with dismay folks in DC who are peacefully demonstrating, being tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets, and the words of our leadership, it's kind of an oxymoron, in DC, apparently they dispersed everybody who was peacefully protesting so the president could walk across to church and hold up a Bible. So the DC Episcopal bishop is denouncing that action, and denounces Trump's photo op at the church after peaceful protesters were tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets. Basically, he is now threatening full military force if local officials do not crack down. I don't know that that's really going to, again, it's not helping. But anyway, Kat, I want to go to you. I know that you had something you wanted to offer before we close.
Yeah, I would just want to say I appreciate the ladies, the Mountain Mamas, for trying to give voice to their own angst and really trying to figure out, how they fit into this equation and really trying to move the conversation forward. I applaud your bravery in doing so publicly, because a lot of people will not have those conversations. But that said, I just, before we get off, I just want to say some other things that, we can do, what you can do is to, engage with people of color, engage with Black people, have conversations, get to know, folks that may live next door to you or that you see in the supermarket or in your church or wherever you might find us, you know, in the same space. I think it's important to have those type of conversations. And I think that you should, you know, as white women, you know, I think that it's important to, you know, appreciate the civil rights movement, because a lot of, you know, the inroads that white women have been able to make, other people of color have been able to make, were off the backs of a majority of Black people who took dog bites, who took hoses, and not to say other people weren't there, but that was largely off of the backs of Black people that we could move things forward, and we're still denied. And you all are still being able to be advantaged, and you're still able to benefit from the privilege. So, you know, when you know, we've opened the door for things to happen for other folks, and we need you all to stand with us in times of need and times of speaking out about issues. And, you know, next time I see you all, hopefully we have a conversation. I can ask you, what's the last book you read that was written by a Black author? And maybe you can tell me it was Zora Neale Hurston or James Baldwin or some Alice Walker, some other phenomenal writer, because those are things that bring you into the fold and expand your experiences and broaden your knowledge about Black culture and our gifts.
I like how you phrase that, our gifts. That was beautifully said. Delegate Walker, this is, and to all the Mountain Mamas and to the people who have watched tonight, thank you for your insights. Thank you for your wisdom, your guidance, and to correct us when we need to be, and mindfulness and awareness that you're bringing to the forefront. And again, I'm going to say this real quick, but if we want diversity in West Virginia, if you want to see change in West Virginia, I think Delegate Walker said, don't vote for your best friend. Vote for the person who's actually going to lead change. Vote for diversity. Vote for different kinds of people. All kinds are welcome here. Let's demonstrate that by showing up at the Capitol, by supporting our people of color in office when they have legislation on, and at any time, calling people out, saying what needs to be said, and standing as an ally. So I've learned a ton. I've got a lot more to learn. And so, Delegate Walker, let's end on your thoughts here.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for almost giving us 2 hours. But there's something that we really need to talk about. Some of you may not have been on the virtual rally yesterday. So I want to bring these last closing words to you. Just imagine what I go through day in and day out. My intelligence is a gamble. My culture is a mockery. My inventions are masked. My anger is irrelevant. My peaceful protest is chaotic. My silence is destruction. My words are presumed disrespectful. My presence is unwanted. My existence should be extinct. My. Who is this my? Who or what is represented by my? Because you see, they say the color of my skin, my religious preference, my sexual orientation, my life, my children, my health, my freedoms, my living is not welcome in the land of the free. But who are they? They are who, what, when, why, how. I'm sick of the they mentality. Until they stop hiding behind the shadows of hatred and hypocrisy, they evidently will never be null and void. They will stop when you take a stand and demand a change. Are you ready? Ready to unite and join others with one common ground, one love. Our numbers will be increased with being on one accord. One. It only took one Rosa Parks. One Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. One Harriet Tubman. One Crispus Attucks. One President Obama, 1. 1 Eric Gardner. Oops, I forgot. That was 2. Mr. Floyd also. Which one will you be? What will you stand up for? What will you use your voice for? What will you advocate? What will you make a difference for you? Let's stand together. Good night, everyone. I am Delegate Danielle Walker. One love.
Thank you. I am ready, Delegate Walker. I am ready. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Let's keep this conversation going, people. Let's keep this conversation going. Good night.